Guess what? The FDA is actually doing its job. Isn't that exciting? After just 60 years, they have finally come out with new warning labels for benzodiazepines. Let's take a look. We reviewed post-marketing databases, adverse event cases reported to the FDA. So, in all seriousness, thumbs up to Christy Huff and other people at the Benzo Info Coalition who have been encouraging people to write in and report more of their adverse events to the FDA, and kudos to those of you who actually followed through with that and did that, because they actually did something with that information. Go fig. One of the first things that they said that actually I did get excited about is they said that there's no standardized benzodiazepine tapering schedule that's suitable for all patients. That means doctors that ripping your patients off in 4 weeks and telling them to just, switch to Buspar or gabapentin or something is not appropriate, nor is it best practice. It says to specifically create a patient-specific plan to gradually reduce the dosage, which is exactly what Professor Heather Ashton has been saying since the 1980s. Maybe doctors will listen. We also found that some patients have had serious withdrawal reactions after benzodiazepines were stopped suddenly, or the dose was reduced too quickly. Some patients experience withdrawal symptoms lasting many months. No! Really? That's incredible! Don't get all in a huff about the months thing. They do talk later on about years. Most patients reported that dependence and subsequent withdrawal symptoms developed even when the benzodiazepine, clonazepam, alprazolam, lorazepam, diazepam, triazolam, or oxazepam was prescribed for therapeutic use. That means that, the majority of people who are having problems with benzodiazepines are taking them as prescribed by a doctor. This isn't about abuse, even though if you go and look on the FDA website in this warning, the very first words that they're going to throw out at you are addiction and abuse and misuse. Oh, and by the way, withdrawal and dependence, sort of. Do not drink alcohol with benzodiazepines. Duh. No judgment. I know there are plenty of people out there who do that, but duh. Even when the benzodiazepine dosage is decreased gradually, you may experience withdrawal symptoms. Yes, guess what? That is what the hundreds of videos on YouTube have been saying forever. It doesn't matter. You can still experience horrifying withdrawal symptoms and then get misdiagnosed. Those might involve abnormal involuntary movements, akathisia, for which we've developed a new drug now, anxiety, blurred vision, memory problems, irritability, insomnia, muscle pain and stiffness, panic attacks, and tremors. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's plenty more where that came from. Contact your healthcare professional if you experience more severe withdrawal symptoms. Those were just the frosting icing on the cake ones, but if you experience these, contact your doctor, such as catatonia. Because I know the first thing that I did when I became catatonic on my benzodiazepine was to pick up my phone and dial the guy who totally disabled me mentally and physically by prescribing me this drug in the first place to ask his opinion on what I should do next. But anyway, I digress. If you experience seizures, delirium, depression, hallucinations, thoughts of killing yourself, mania, or psychosis. Because again, I know that the first thing that we do when we're not living in reality and we don't, understand what's going on in the world around us is to make a logical choice like picking up the phone and calling a medical provider. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to take a benzodiazepine or you're on one. This part, I do actually love. Physical dependence. Doctors, listen! Physical dependence is the body's adaptation to repeated use of a drug, resulting in withdrawal reactions when the medicine is abruptly discontinued or the dose is significantly reduced. If you'd like a great example of this, I have a really cool video that shows a visual of that you're welcome to show to your patients. It's not the same thing as addiction. They go in and they explain addiction. Dependence is something totally, completely different. Dependence may also lead some individuals to continue using medications to avoid symptoms of withdrawal. Meaning that people are going to be taking these drugs because they think they need the drugs because the drugs are making them think they need the drugs. Before prescribing a benzodiazepine and throughout treatment, assess each patient's risk for abuse, misuse, addiction. Standard screening tools are available. However, There are no standard screening tools to assess the risk of people who might be completely mentally and physically disabled simply from taking this drug as prescribed. So those people are just kind of screwed. Sorry. Warn patients and caregivers about the risks of, abuse and misuse and addiction. Oh, and also withdrawal, just so you know, and the associated signs and symptoms. That's called informed consent, folks. That should just be standard practice anyway. But it's not. Some benzodiazepines are indicated for very short-term use, i.e. only 1 to 2 doses, such as Valium and Ativan or lorazepam. Oh, wait, no, that's only if you're given diazepam or lorazepam via IV, because that goes directly into your blood. Whereas if you take a pill of Valium or Ativan, that goes into your blood. But those are okay to take longer, but the other kind, that's only 1 to 2 days, I say. Got it? Okay. If a patient experiences withdrawal symptoms, it may be necessary to pause the taper for a period of time, or raise the benzodiazepine to the previous dosage and then proceed with a more gradual taper once stable. A little warning there with that. Updosing on your benzo can also kindle you and create more problems, so just be careful with that one. But at least they're saying it. Protracted withdrawal syndrome. It's a thing! It's a word! It was right here on the FDA's website! Woo! No, I'm not manic. Protracted withdrawal syndrome persists beyond 4 to 6 weeks after initial benzodiazepine withdrawal. Symptoms may last as long as 12 months. I mean, I'm on month 62 here, but who's counting? These include anxiety, cognitive impairment, depression, insomnia, not fornication, motor symptoms, weakness, paresthesia, tinnitus. Yes, I do still have tinnitus from my very first dose of Ambien, which they didn't even list on here. Report adverse events involving benzodiazepines or other medicines to the MedWatch program using the information at the bottom of this page, using the information which I will also post down below. Yes, it is important to tell the FDA about your symptoms, because then this information actually gets out to doctors who have no clue about any of this. And it's not, despite what some people think or say, all their faults. Approximately 80% of cases described of benzodiazepine withdrawal included CNS effects like
insomnia, increased anxiety, panic attacks, memory impairment, depression, cardiovascular effects, gastrointestinal effects, abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea.
These cases reported a wide range of time to dependence, with some describing the onset as early as days to weeks after the start of a benzodiazepine. Similarly, there were variations in the duration of the withdrawal symptoms, lasting from weeks to, are you ready? Years. Years. The FDA said it. It can take years to withdraw and heal from these medications, and it can take days to get to that point where it takes years to withdraw, which means, yes, the person who just commented on my benzodiazepine video, who was only on it for a short period of time, and their doctor, like so many other doctors, said, oh, just get off it, you haven't been on that long. No, that's not okay. You can't tell your patient to just suddenly stop a benzodiazepine because they haven't been on it that long. The FDA has officially said it. In some cases, the patient reported that the prescriber abruptly discontinued the benzodiazepine rather than prescribing a taper to mitigate withdrawal symptoms. And then, of course, they play a little bit of the blame game. We're like, yeah, but it could have been the other symptoms popping back up and an underlying condition. Right, except for my friends who were put on these for less than a month for things like an ulcer that they contracted when they went out of the country. That's not an underlying condition. So here's just a little bit of info benzo education for you. In 2019, an estimated 92 million benzodiazepine prescriptions were dispensed in the US, with Xanax being the most common. In 2018, an estimated 50% of patients who were dispensed oral benzodiazepines received them for the duration of 2 months or longer. That means that at least half of people who are prescribed benzodiazepines are being prescribed them longer than what is safely recommended. In 2016, the nationally estimated number of emergency department visits due to non-medical use of benzodiazepines was higher than the corresponding estimate for prescription opioids. Yes, there are more benzodiazepines prescribed and more people being harmed by benzodiazepines than opioids. But all we're ever hearing about on the news and from the President of the United States and from doctors is about opioids, except for the fact that doctors have been prescribing benzodiazepines like candy since the 1960s. From 2013 to 2017, 55% of benzodiazepine-involved overdose deaths also documented involvement of prescription opioids. You're gonna hear this statistic that says 30% of opioid overdose deaths involve benzodiazepines, but guess what? That's also including the illegal ones. But when it comes to prescribed benzodiazepines and opioids and deaths related to those, it's 55%. A relatively smaller proportion involved benzodiazepines alone compared to the number of visits due to prescription opioid non-medical use. Do you know what that means also? Like numerically, basically what that means is that most people are not abusing benzodiazepines. This is not an addiction problem. That's why my channel is not about addiction. I never abuse these drugs. The vast majority of people do not abuse these drugs because why should they? They're not that great for the purpose of abuse unless you are combining them with other things. Most people are prescribed these and take them as prescribed. And finally, epidemiological data on benzodiazepine dependence and withdrawal are scarce. Notice dependence, not addiction. Oh, there's plenty of studies out there on addiction. You'll find all kinds of data on addiction. Dependence, crickets. Yeah, they're still depending on the research done by Professor Heather Ashton, done back in the 1980s. Because nobody cares. The pharmaceutical companies don't care. The FDA hasn't cared. Why should they? The medical profession doesn't care because this drug is a catch-all medication for any and every condition. So who cares if patients are being harmed from taking them as prescribed? But the truth is they don't have information. Therefore, they don't know what they're doing. The people who do know, who do understand this are the people like myself and like you who have been through it and have had to advise other people on what to do, and the doctors who actually listen to us. And now we've finally gotten the FDA to listen to us. Look, I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. This is great. I mean, my hope and prayer is that some doctors will actually read this and listen to it, and if they don't, you can take this into them and at least show them that our own government is saying that you need to do a slow, gradual taper based on individual needs and not based on what the doctor thinks you should do based on zero information that he has, because epidemiological data on benzodiazepine dependence and withdrawal are scarce anyway. Benzodiazepine community. That is the new and exciting information from your FDA, who, as people like to point out in the middle of all this craziness going on, is a reliable source of information. And you should listen to these reliable sources because we all know how trustworthy the FDA is, which makes me just want to... Anyway, we'll take what we've got.